Hello, everyone, and welcome to this fantastic video. If you don't know my name is Pavlik Nusonovic from England, proud Russianin of a Russian passport holder, and I am here with Julia S., aka Miss Kaluga, who has been a friend for many years, a very loyal student, and is climbing the ladder of success with her special courses. Julia, would you like to sort of introduce yourself and tell everyone what you are now a specialist of?
Okay, so by day I'm a pretty enthusiastic English teacher, and by night I'm a little bit less enthusiastic English teacher with an ice cream or a chocolate. So I've been teaching for 17 years, and phonetics and pronunciation have become part and parcel of my teaching career because I do understand that this is the main thing in understanding native speakers, and this is why phonetics matters, and this is how I called my course.
I absolutely, phonetics does matter, and I think it's a fantastic name for your course because, you know, when I think about what's the biggest compliment you could ever get as a language learner, and I think it's being confused for a native. That means not only is your language spot on, but your pronunciation as well, because that's the key point for people going like, I thought you were English, I thought you were Russian, and it is a massive boost to the ego. It's a massive confidence boost. But we've got a set of questions I want to go through with you. The first one is, why don't ESL students understand even simple phrases by ear? So, we have this, the English that we have in the classroom, but we've heard very often that when people go abroad to England and they come back, they say, like, initially, I understood nothing. And that was the same for me with German, that I had this German sort of typical classroom variant. And when I had to go to Germany for my academic year abroad as a part of my university program, I was in a former East German town, and I understood nothing for the first couple of weeks. And I was shocked. And I was like, what the hell have I been learning? Explain that.
That's about connected speech. We are not ready to face the real world when we go abroad, because we've got our textbooks and especially recorded audios. And when we go out and see people in the street, we are confused because this is not what life has prepared us for. We hear that some words some sounds or even words or half of a sentence is omitted, and you just kind of, why should you say this? It's like something is missing, and this is why you do not understand the context. And this is why the connected speech should be, this is why connected speech should be taught, but it's never taught in a class.
I completely agree. I completely agree with you 100%, because there is a good book that I used many years ago called Listening Resource Pack. And I've got the audio somewhere, and it kind of really helps with connected speech, because that's what we speak like, because I think people have got to understand is that the audios that you tend to have in textbooks are very well scripted. They're very articulate and clear. Similarly, TV shows, even though they're a very, very good source of English, to kind of get started, because for me, I call it the next best thing. They're scripted, and depending on the TV show, depending on the source, of course. But it's that kind of English when you step off a plane in London or in America, and you're like, ugh. And like we discussed this before the recording, phrases like "gissia" or like, "you're right," and it's like, what's like, it's like, are you all right? You're right. I've got a present for you. Not for you, but for you. And this connected speech is really, really, really important, because I think, because we often talk about, like, in learning languages, that first we have to acquire skill and creativity comes later. But the problem with this connected speech and pronunciation, we try to acquire skill, but there's no creativity. We don't go that far. That's the problem. We seem to stop. That's the thing. And then it's kind of like, quite a confidence drop when you kind of go into an English speaking environment where it's kind of extremely unclear, or you're just not used to it.
And this is why a lot of students fail during exams, especially international exams, Cambridge or IELTS, because there are a lot of accents, and like natives, even like from Ireland or Scotland. And if they can do reading with flying colors, they can just fail their listening completely just because they do not hear.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, also just to kind of support our listeners here is that, I am partially Scottish, in
Oh,
my blood. Yeah, yeah, I'm actually quarter Scottish and quarter Irish, half English. And my grandmother was Scottish, and when her sister used to come down, I didn't understand the word. So not even with connected speech, I actually didn't understand her. And my grandmother had to translate. So I think that yeah, I think people should realize that, it's impossible to understand everyone and everything. There are some Americans I never understood as well. But I think with that aside, yes, I think that that's something to get used to over time, but connected speech is a must. I also want to draw people's attention to something else. You do a lot of shadow work for proper pronunciation. Could you elaborate on that?
yeah, I love it. And this is one of my, this is my favorite technique. And I would say that this is the key to proper pronunciation because
Hmm.
like we wanted to discuss this, sources to study pronunciation. Yeah, we've got like Hadway, we've got pronunciation in use, but the best way to master pronunciation, just go to the internet, find real sources,
Yeah.
find people who you would like to sound uh, like, and
Hmm.
just mirror them. But shadowing is not only about words and grammar structures. It's
Hmm.
about melody, mm,
Yeah.
gestures, the whole appearance, because when we do this with my students, they often take even, the things to look like the person that they are shadowing, like to have a microphone, to have a gecko by their side, spider or whatever, just to try to become like to be in the shoes of the person.
Hmm.
And this really helps. But this will not work if you don't like the person, unfortunately.
That's a very good point. That's a very good point, isn't it? Because I think people have their remember, like in Telegram where we discussed Emma Watson. That's
Yeah.
because I hate her.
Yes.
I hate Emma Watson because I think she's a sanctimonious woke piece of rubbish. Uh, like who's basically like, oh, my life has been so hard. I'm going to dictate everyone about a hard life because I was driven to school in a Bentley and not a Ferrari. Oh, what a shame. Yeah, it's so true, isn't it? That you kind of shadow those people that you like, that are kind of close to you, and also you kind of, you know, copy their behaviorisms as well. I saw a couple of videos that you did with some kids on shadowing, and
Yeah.
they're really damn good, like really, really like spot on. And I was like, bloody hell, and it does work. It does work because the whole point of this shadowing, it comes down to the fundamental point of exposure. That's the thing, you've got to have that exposure. And also it's real English. And but also you said you hit the nail on the head when you talked about melodies, the intonation, that there's the stress, because it's like that's one of the things I've noticed, that when I listen to learners, when something's maybe not spot on, like their language may be absolutely correct, but there's always something a bit nagging, nagging at the back of the mind. And it's like the melody was a bit off. So it's like with question tags, for example, there's a certain melody with question
Mhm.
tags, whichever form they come in. And that's why it's actually very hard for students to use, because the melody is often wrong,
Yeah.
and by shadowing, you can kind of get that right. It's like, wow, now you are spot on native like. That's the thing.
Yeah, and the same happens actually with, for example, exclamations, because exclamations can have like rising tone or falling tone, and the meaning
Mhm.
of this will be completely different, like exactly or exactly. So
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
the second the second was like exactly, so we just go out of here. Yeah,
Mhm.
so and shadowing helps just to feel this, not only the grammar and vocabulary that you have been aiming at, but also this native thing that is felt. It cannot be taught. It's just
Yeah.
done with practice.
Absolutely. It's done with a lot of practice, and I call it like the next best thing. So ideally, again, if you could be living in an English speaking country, I mean, that's amazing, but that doesn't guarantee that people pick up the accents if they don't immerse themselves into the whole culture, and communicate 24/7 with English people. But the shadowing and like the courses that you provide and stuff like that, I call it like the next best thing, which is like it makes people very, very, very close, even to the point of even, doing better than some native speakers, and even being more articulate than quite a few. Even like my speaking club students, the English they provide is like, yes, you're better than 50% of my nation, kind of thing. I've got this other question, a very interesting one. Is it relevant to teach transcription, like using the IPA?
Yeah, so it's a good question, to be honest.
Mhm.
Yes, because now when we speak about this lexical approach or communicative method, they are not about transcription. And sometimes my students say just, okay, we just listen to the recording on Google Translator or Cambridge Dictionary, and that's enough. And what we have is that nobody in the class can read transcription, even when they are finishing school. And to my mind, this is a problem because first, you don't always have these audio recordings
Yeah.
in the dictionary. Secondly, the transcription will show you the syllable, the stress, if there can be schwa, if there's no schwa, if
Mhm.
what can link the words. For example, R-colored vowels in the American accent. This
Mhm.
is in the transcription, and this will help you to connect words. For
Mhm.
example, just if we go and see the transcription, we have got like American version and British version, and we see this tails, short tails with vowels in the American transcription. So, and like in British it will be car, in American it will be car, like
Yeah.
daughter and daughter. And this
Yeah.
is stated in transcription. And if you hear and you do not understand what's like going on in the
Mhm.
audio or in some video, you go there and everything becomes clear. And
Mhm.
what's more, so I like to say that it's not my opinion, schwa is the best vowel in the world because, first of all, it's the most widespread vowel. So you have a lot of schwas everywhere in every sentence, but you do
Mhm.
not actually notice them. And
Mhm.
once you understand what this is, how to pronounce it correctly, because
Mhm.
people often like substitute it with a sound or a
Mhm.
sound. It's not correct. And this is
Mhm.
why they sound not native.
A bit off, a bit off.
Yeah, right. But once you like go to the transcription and you see, okay, it should be here, then you can try to articulate it.
Mhm.
Yes, it's a long way, but if you want to have native-like pronunciation, the game is worth a candle.
I think it's a sort of very interesting point, and I can offer an opinion from a different perspective because when I learned German and I learned linguistics at university alongside that, we did social linguistics, applied linguistics, but for some reason we never touched phonetics. Like we never touched phonetics. I don't know why we didn't, but we didn't. And I remember when I was in Germany at this university and we had like a phonetics lesson. I had no idea what they were talking about. I'm like, whatever. And the funny thing is, I even got to a stage of German where I was confused for a German, not anymore because I haven't had the practice, but I know I got to that point without learning the IPA, without learning these kind of like phonetic symbols. And I think I managed that only because I had that contact, that I was in Germany, and even after university, living in Germany for some time, that I was like living that life,
Yeah, this
surrounded
next
by
to
German,
you.
like that exposure. That's why I would say I would say that I'm that maybe that rare exception. And I think that learning the IPA is good for a couple of reasons. Firstly, because as I said before, first acquire skill, creativity comes later. So I think there's no harm in actually, doing a bit of hard graft in learning the rules, learning the symbols, because again, if you were listening to an audio and you couldn't differentiate between, like, say, this American or this British sound, whatever, the IPA is going to help you with that, and at least give you some guidance. And I think that it's really good to know that. And then once you've mastered it over some time, then you can do whatever you want with it. So it's one of those things I wish I had learnt it. I wish I had done. Because I think it would have helped me even master Russian. Because even when I tried to learn Russian, it's like, it would make things a lot easier. So I kind of agree. I think it is relevant to teach it. Some people might disagree. People have got by, but I try to teach not based on what was good for me, but what is good for people under the circumstances.
I would add here one thing. When I was doing CELTA, we also
Mhm,
had this session devoted to pronunciation. And as I was doing that in London, there were native speakers as well who were
mhm,
going through the same course. And there were
mhm.
others from different countries. But natives struggled most because all other people, they studied here or there. Yeah, that was pretty challenging for many. But they at least they could understand at least something. But
Mhm.
natives, they were like, huh? What? No, because this is natural. Like the
Yeah.
same as I would be teaching Russian pronunciation. I have no clue what's there and what pitfalls students may get into.
Yeah, yeah, I understand what you mean. It's yeah, you kind of take it for granted when you're the holder of the language, that's for sure. But I do agree with you what you said about the transcription. It's like I manage without it, but I wish I had learnt it. There we go. The next question is why is it important to find time for teaching pronunciation in class? So we've given some ideas already about connected speech, IPA. But why is it important to find time for pronunciation? Because many teachers don't do that, by the way. But why should
Attention, to draw attention, to draw students' attention to its existence, first of all,
Mhm,
that English is not only about words and grammar. It's
mhm.
also about this thing. It's like, when you study cultural things in class, it's
Yeah.
when I just pause my present simple teaching and I say, okay, now they had Easter yesterday. That's why we're going to speak about this because
Mhm.
this is part and parcel of the culture. And
Absolutely spot on.
yeah, and pronunciation as well. So
Hmm.
just
Hmm.
for students to know that this exists, that okay, my teacher pays attention to this, and maybe they will just one day follow the example.
I think you're absolutely right, and I'm really happy to hear that opinion because I think too many teachers think in absolutes. It's either this or we don't need that, and nothing in life is like an extreme. It's not black and white, and there are so many bits and bobs that you've got to master, and pronunciation is important because it's not even just that, but like also just saying, by the way, did you know that if you travel 1 hour in any direction in England, you're going to get a different accent? You
Yeah.
know, and also what you said, which is absolutely spot on about, knowing the cultural aspects. And that's just not the English people like the royal family. We don't anymore. After the Queen passed, we hate them. But it's about bringing students closer to that language because I think if you're going to think in absolutes, I think if you're going to teach a kind of very watered down version of English without much contact, well, that's where the motivation dies. The students don't see the point of learning it, and that's like, for example, this sounds like an advertisement now, but I suppose it partially is. But my news club that's coming up in May, I mean, this is going to be like groundbreaking in the sense that it's like I've taught so many like Russians over these years. When I ask them, "What's the NHS? What do you understand by the term dignitas? What's happening with like the crime rates in London?" They have no idea. And I'm like, well, how can you effectively provide substance to your students and lessons without knowing any of that? Even with like not just about knowing the IPA and teacher pronunciation, but how it's spoken around the world. How do we natives talk, understand each other? I think it would be very interesting for Russian students to hear an Englishman say, "I don't understand the Scottish." It depends where from Scotland. There's some American is very easy. I love the American of the southern states where they have that southern drawl, as they call it, like Alabama.
Ah.
I love like I can't do it very well, but I love it. And I think that like knowing that kind of information, or we call it in English area studies, it provides a lot of fuel to the lesson. It provides contact between what you have in a Russian classroom to actually that country. Without that knowledge, there's very little reason to learn a language. There's no application. And a part of like knowing pronunciation or area studies or what's happening in our countries, that is the link. That is the connection to practical application. And I don't think enough teachers realize that. I'm not saying that teachers like have to study the news inside out. Even I don't. But to at least know what the English people think, what's going on, what's shaping their perceptions, what's our perceptions of accents, what's our perceptions of like, because we even have views of how people in Birmingham speak. We hate it. It's the most hated accent in Britain, and I think Russian students who are interested in English would love to know that. Why? Why? Let's find a typical strong Birmingham accent. Can you hear it? What do you think? and it really, as I said, is exposure to like, if you can't be in the country, again, it's as close as it could be, and that's why it's really, really important.
Yeah, important.
Important.
Yeah.
Exactly. Even important in it. Absolutely. Now, talking about, you're a like really professional teacher when it comes to pronunciation. I've seen you in action and I really, really like it, because I wouldn't be interviewing you if you weren't. What's the most effective method for teaching pronunciation to beginners?
Personal example,
Hmm.
I would say. And I would use a lot of unexpected things to draw students' attention. So I have my magic bag here. I have prepared it, and what's there inside you will just be fascinated about. So I've got a ribbon. I've got a lot of rubber bands just to
Hmm.
show full length and clipped vowels. For example, if we need to understand the difference between beat, bit, and bit.
That's
So
genius.
the students can use the rubber bands or whatever they have, because I did that online, and my students, of course, they did not have rubber bands, but they had their chargers, and they just showed that with the help of the wire, and that worked pretty good.
Mm.
Then I have got a cork just for some tongue
You know
twisters.
what you've been doing after lessons?
Yes, I've got a balloon, I've got some feathers, so whatever. Actually, I also have an accordion somewhere there in my kids' room. I use everything to draw their attention to like melody, intonation, tone, and vowels, because this is the thing. I like to explain, like, imagine that you are in an elevator, and each time you go upstairs at the beginning of a sentence, and then you go downstairs, pum, 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 pum.
Mhm.
Then you go up in an elevator, and then go downstairs. I draw this. Of course, there are songs, poems. Actually, the Russian language sometimes helps, even though, but this is not my invention. People say that if there's a difficulty, if a student struggles with pronunciation and phonetics, okay, just keep one difficulty at a time. Use your
Yeah.
own language and just forget about this communicative method and just explain
Mhm.
the easiest way, the better. Yeah, the easier the better. And
Mhm.
this helps. And when they understand that something is not something vague somewhere in their head or in the air, like pronunciation, it can be touched. So vowels can be touched. And I use the balloon to show how you should breathe during the sentence, and they see it. So how their lungs work. And this really helps.
Well, that's genius. By the way, I want to remind the audience that actually this August, I think in the last week of August, I need to put it together though. I'm going to actually run a conference in Moscow. And I actually have already talked to Julie about being one of the participants, about sharing her ideas of such activities for teaching pronunciation, because I think the teaching community really needs to hear such ideas. I think they're a genius, absolute genius. And it'll be such an honor to have you as a speaker there. I can share one activity I did with low-level learners as well, like years ago, when I was teaching in Moscow. I had a grid of like 9 words with very similar pronunciation, like pat, pet, pit, pate, like, and some others, right? And each grid had a number like 1 to 9. And I would actually like have like some examples where I'd actually that I would say in random order some of these words, and the students had to write down the numbers that corresponded to the grids. And as like, then I would say, okay, do you have the same as me? And they would like sometimes yes, sometimes no, and that would really sort of train their ears. And I did that with words that sounded similar, and that was really, really good fun. But and then after that, I would say now we're going to try and do it in a sentence with some connected speech. It's like I need to go to the pet shop. And it's like, is that pet pit? Is that, well, I understand by context it's that one, it's pet. So but it really, really worked.
And this is like what works in shadowing, by the way, because when you start shadowing, you focus on one thing at a time. You will not be able to do the whole thing, the whole piece.
Yeah.
you start like just at like with vowels, let's say, with schwa sound, or with T allophones, or only linking R, for example, if there are many examples of this in the piece that you have taken. And you try this, then you add something else, then you add something else, and then it's like a snowball. This sentence becomes more and more native.
Yeah.
These are called like short couples. I do not remember how they are called. Like when you have like pat, pet. There are a lot of exercises on the internet with that. So
Well,
for
there's millions.
students to say, yeah, they can actually have like red and blue colors and just show to the teacher what they hear. Like if it's a or a, if it's or. Yeah, it could work.
Fantastic. And also another question, how would you keep your students mindful about their pronunciation outside of the classroom? You know, so when you're pushing them like face to face, how do you maintain that momentum outside?
That's a good question. And this brings us back to the question about making them think about pronunciation during the class and including pronunciation techniques and exercises in every time you teach them. So drawing attention and your own personal example, and maybe explaining why it's important, because like I do believe that this is the card of invitation. So this is your face. It creates the first impression of the person. Once you open your mouth, maybe a person, I would not say this for sure, but I think it's just my own personal opinion. If a person with a good B1 but has good trained pronunciation, the impression will be even better, because this is the person to work with, you know, because he looks into detail. He or she, okay, they had time, they devoted some time to go deeper and not just to learn the language, but try to sound native, because it's very, it should be respected, you know. And this is the key, just personal example and telling them that why they should do this.
I think you're absolutely right, because as we said at the beginning about being confused for a native, it's the biggest ego boost. And also,
Yeah.
I think that, like, you know, even as native speakers, I think learners have got to understand that, like, firstly, as natives, you know, we don't learn languages. I mean, I'm one of like the absolute rare exceptions in England, you know, because when at university, we had set many languages in our department, but it was the smallest department in the whole university. You know, with not many, there's like 3 students on my course doing just German, 3. You know, there was like a couple of combined honor students, and I think that as a result, I think we English speakers, we don't understand the intricacies and the effort that is made to get to such a high level of fluency. It's really difficult, and even to kind of master pronunciation in any language is very difficult. And I think that, like, so if, say, for example, you went to England and, like, you know, you sound very English, we wouldn't naturally think, oh, well, she's worked very hard. She's worked hard on her pronunciation. That wouldn't correspond with us. That just wouldn't actually cross our minds at all. We would automatically be like, she sounds fantastic. You know, she sounds like us. It's like, that's how we think. Do you see what I mean? And so, like, by doing that, and also as well as having good vocab, good grammar, like, you know, everything, you know, that comes together, that's why, you know, you would be more kind of accepted into native circles than those who sound, unfortunately, like a technical. Of course, personality does matter. That is really, really important. Personality is absolutely important. That really shines through. I've even had students whose English isn't very good, but have shining personalities. You want to hang around with them. But so us English natives, if you can combine that personality with pretty sounding spot on, I mean, you'll be just drawn in completely. And I mean, I even know that for a fact because I've got a very good friend, Oksana, who lives in Istanbul. And if we kind of cast the pronunciation aside for the second, she's even telling me how she had a meeting with some English people there, and she was using some of the vocab from the speaking club, and they were so shocked that she knew such native words like bog standards and other bits and pieces that you just don't normally learn in a textbook or like easily come across. But they were so shocked that she knew such sort of native phrases, and it kind of drew her into their circles much more. And of course, then everyone benefited. But pronunciation is absolutely vital. Because as I said, it's one of those things that's really interesting because there's two sides of the argument I've heard from some, let's call teacher trainers. And I think there's sort of two ideological perspectives because on one hand, I think if you're not in an English speaking country, don't be caught up on trying to achieve perfection. But then I know that the best compliment is to be confused for a native, and that's what you're aiming for. So, do you know what I mean? It's really, really difficult. You want to be confused for a native. That's the ultimate goal. But at the same time, don't be caught up on it if you can't manage it. It's really difficult. I'll go to another question. What resources would you recommend for teaching pronunciation? So for teachers who are listening to this, what would you put forward?
Yeah, we have already touched upon that. There is a headway pronunciation course. There's pronunciation in use, right? But again, so just have a list of native speakers, bloggers or actors, comedians as well, who are like sound good to your ear, and try to like stuff your life, maybe your Instagram, Telegram, whatever, YouTube channels with those people. And the more you listen to them, the easier and the faster it will stick to your accent. Just listening. You can practice and probably, yes, to have a proper coach to listen to you and to correct you, because you can do whatever on your own, but you will not hear your mistakes, unfortunately. So that's the key.
So having a coach is a good idea. So what it comes down to is investing into a good teacher.
Yeah.
Like yourself, because honestly, and I know it sounds like I'm plugging you, which I am to an extent. I'm not going to lie, but you are good at what you do. I mean, I've seen your advertising, I've seen your course material. It's really impressive. It's really professional. You really know what you're talking about. Like when you sent me that information, I was expecting one sheet. It's like that much. I was like, bloody hell. It's kind of insane. Have you ever thought about maybe putting together a program and selling it to schools around Russia?
Yes, I have, and I even tried, but I haven't had enough time so far. But I will do it.
A bit more time. Well, I think Russia has a place for you because, as I said, you're very humble, you're very kind, you're very professional, and I know for a fact you're one of the hardest workers that I know. You really are a hard worker, and I think I think a lot of teachers could benefit from your knowledge. So, hopefully they will follow you, they follow your advice. Hopefully, this conference will take place in August. I just need to put it together first. I need to earn some money in order to actually book the place. Then I'll kind of start advertising that, and you can share some of your valuable experience. But Julie, thank you so much for your time. It's been such a pleasure.
Yeah, thank you so much to you too.
You're welcome. You're welcome, and take care. And everyone can follow Julia, follow her page. Strongly recommended.
Yeah, thank you very much for your time, Paul.
You're welcome.